Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
The members of Twilight Reign, who saw their guild master being tortured by the half-elf, felt their hearts shudder due to helplessness. Suddenly, one of the high rankers of Twilight Reign dropped their weapons and knelt on the ground. He then bowed in Lux's direction, as if begging him to spare his life. A few seconds later, more dwarves from the Dark Organization dropped their weapons and knelt in Lux's direction. A domino effect then took place, and all the members of Twilight Reign knelt one by one. They already knew that fighting against Lux was hopeless, so they decided to surrender. The members of Twilight Reign hoped that Lux would show them mercy and simply capture them all. Why are they bowing to him? Cephas clicked his tongue. Didn't I say that they should kneel and beg for my mercy? Why should they kneel to you? Kai asked in disdain. You're just a Cephas. Do you think you are on the same level as Lux? Keep dreaming. The Dragonborn looked at the boar and felt betrayed. Just now, the two of them were on the same side. But now, Kai had shamelessly jumped to Lux's bandwagon and even disdained the Dragonborn for his earlier attempt to make the members of Twilight Reign his slaves. Lux ignored the members of Twilight Reign and simply focused his attention on the four saints in front of him. Avernus Shaun, you know what to do, Lux said. The Dracolic chuckled before flying toward the direction of the Vice Guild Master, thinking about how he should beat him up until he was half dead. Shaun, on the other hand, was less forgiving and directly hacked off an arm of one of the saints of Twilight Reign, who was rooted in place. A blood-curdling wail spread in the surroundings as the saint's arm fell to the ground. The fourth saint, who had broken out of his daze, flew toward one of the passageways in an attempt to escape. He understood that the battle was already lost, and there was simply no way for them to make a comeback with the current situation. The only thing on the saint's mind was to preserve his life and hide from the half-elf, whose gaze was boring holes through his back. Originally, the saint thought that Lux wouldn't care whether he escaped or not because no one moved to block him to prevent him from reaching his destination. It was at this moment that he heard the whistling of the wind, which forced him to dodge to his right side. A second later, a black arrow flew harmlessly past his shoulder, making the saint's eye shrink due to how close it was. However, before he could even thank his lucky stars, another arrow pierced through his back. The saint looked at the head of the arrow that was sticking out of his chest in disbelief. Soon, his skin started to turn black as Maeve's corruption arrow worked its magic. Anyone hit by her arrows would find themselves being corrupted by the element of destruction from inside their bodies until they turned to ashes. Maeve's bow and arrow were divine weapons, similar to the spear of Longinus. Because of this, very few individuals would be able to survive a direct hit from her. Unfortunately, the saint under Twilight Reign wasn't one of those people. Half a minute later, the saint's left started turning into ash, and not long later, the corruption spread to the rest of his body. "Nu," the saint shouted. "Have mercy. Please forgive me. I am willing to do anything. Just save me." As if waiting for that moment, a black coffin appeared in front of the dwarven saint. The lid of the coffin opened, revealing a bottomless darkness that was darker than black. Rows of text appeared in front of the saint, which made him feel that hope was not lost. If you want to be saved, jump right in. If you do, I'll even restore your arms as a freebie. Blackfire's words were like the temptation of a devil who was offering an olive branch of salvation. The saint didn't hesitate and dove headfirst inside the coffin. He knew that he could either take the chance offered to him or turn into ashes, leaving nothing behind. A childish laughter reverberated in the surroundings as Blackfire shifted its attention to the remaining three saints from Twilight Reign. He knew that his master had no intention of letting the masterminds of the organization get a second chance at life, so it approached the saints like the harbinger of death, making their faces turn pale. Avernus stabbed one of the saints in the chest with his black sword, draining their life force. When he felt like the dwarf was only a few seconds away from death, the Dracolic casually tossed the saint inside Blackfire as if he was just throwing out the trash. Shaun dealt with the third saint and also tossed the latter towards the black coffin that had wittily devoured him in Agartha. The Juggernaut had to admit that after Blackfire converted him into one of Lux's subordinates, the things that he couldn't do back in Agartha were now becoming a reality. Lux gazed at the pitiful guildmaster of Twilight Reign, who was trapped in place. This was the person who had given the order to have him and Aina assassinated back then. A person who held absolute power and could kill him just by snapping his fingers. Now, their roles had been reversed. He was now the one who held Magnar's life in his hand. A life that would easily disappear with a snap of his fingers. Any last words? Lux asked as he looked at the saint, who was glaring at him in anger. I should have killed you when you were still an apostle, Magnar said through gritted teeth. If I only knew that you would be my downfall, I would have personally killed you myself. Lux looked at Magnar in the eye before the corner of his lips rose into a smirk. Unfortunately, there are no ifs in this world, Lux stated before snapping his fingers. Avernus, who had already positioned himself behind Magnar, thrust his blade into the dwarf's back. The Dracolic then pulled his sword out, letting the once powerful man who terrorized the entirety of the kingdom of Gwellivan bleed to death. I will see you in hell, Magnar said as blood dripped out of his lips. Lux sighed before shaking his head. Why are all of you reserving a place for me in hell? Lux asked. Do I look like someone who is about to kick the bucket? Maybe you're too hot for them to handle, Kai commented as she walked beside Lux. I remember Iris saying that you almost melted her from the inside out after the two of you had a MMPH. The half-elf covered the boar's snout and prevented her from continuing what she was about to say. Lux knew that his fiancée's IQ would drastically decrease whenever she was in her boar form, but there were things that she shouldn't say even if she were stupid, especially in front of his friends and acquaintances. I'll deal with you later, Kai, Lux said to the boar through telepathy. I'll make sure to melt you from the inside out. I didn't know you were into bestiality, Kai replied in a surprised tone. I mean, I love you with all of my heart, so if you want it, I am up for it as well. Lux almost choked on his saliva after hearing the boar's reply. Because of this, he decided to punish her after he was done with this place. Avernus, Shaun, Cleo, and Maeve, assist Sir Nevriel in dealing with the prisoners, Lux ordered. Scarlet, Shaun, both of you assist them as well? Yes, master. The two assassins finally made their voices heard, surprising their colleagues in Twilight Reign. Soon, the army of the Kingdom of Gwellivan rounded up all the survivors and tied their high rankers up with magical chains. As for the low rankers, they didn't dare to make a move to escape. In front of 3 calamity-ranked monsters and 5 saints, their chances of escaping were 0. After making sure that everything was finally dealt with, Lux grabbed the talkative boar and teleported back to his guild headquarters. Kai then returned to her human form and was about to apologize to Lux. However, the half-elf didn't give her the chance. Soon, the high priestess of the Rowan tribe found herself melting from the inside out as Lux punished her until she passed out with a satisfied smile on her face. It had been 3 days since Lux helped Nevriel deal with the members of Twilight Reign. With the greatest threat in their kingdom finally rooted out of the ground, peace finally returned to the Dwarf Kingdom. The half-elf was currently making his way to the royal palace because the king had asked to meet him. But before he arrived at the throne room, Princess Anastasia ambushed him, once again jumping into his arms. Lux reflexively spread his arms wide to catch the adorable dwarf princess, but Princess Anastasia had other plans in her mind. She had controlled the force of her jump, and she landed gracefully a step away from the half-elf's body. She then grabbed Lux's right hand and dipped his thumb in a bottle filled with ink. A moment later, Millie appeared with 2 scrolls, one in each hand. At a speed that would put the Flash to shame, Princess Anastasia pressed Lux's thumb against the 2 scrolls, leaving his thumbprint behind. Millie then vanished without a trace, leaving Lux tilting his head in confusion. Everything happened too fast, so he had no idea what just transpired in front of him. Then, as if nothing had happened, Princess Anastasia lovingly wiped the ink from the half-elf's hand with her handkerchief, removing the ink from it. Let's go, Sir Lux. Princess Anastasia held Lux's hand and pulled him in the direction of the throne room. Father is waiting for us. Lux didn't resist and allowed the dwarf princess to pull him. He still had no idea about what happened just now, but he had a feeling that he would soon find out after meeting with King Uther. When Lux arrived at the throne room, the guards bowed respectfully before opening the gate. They had heard that Lux played a vital role in subjugating Twilight Reign, and this earned him the respect of the guards, who were very loyal to their kingdom. "Father, I brought Sir Lux," Princess Anastasia announced as soon as she entered the throne room, making the king smile at his daughter. Nevriel was also inside the throne room, standing beside the seated dwarf king. He gave Lux a brief nod, to which the half-elf responded with a nod of his own. "Lux, before anything else, I would like to thank you for what you did for my kingdom." King Uther rose up from his throne and gave Lux a bow. "Without you, Twilight Reign might have won this war, replacing me as the king of this kingdom. I am truly grateful for what you did, not only for my people but for my family as well." Ever since he was crowned king, Uther had never bowed his head to anyone. But what Lux did was truly exceptional, and he felt that there was no shame in giving the half-elf the respect and gratitude that he deserved. After doing that gesture, he once again sat on his throne and spoke like the king he was. "For your exceptional contribution to our kingdom, I hereby declare you Duke Kaiser," King Uther stated. "I will bestow upon you any land that you wish to have. Not only that, the kingdom will also open its treasury for you, allowing you to pick 3 treasures of your choice. Truth be told, this isn't nearly enough to repay you for what you have done for us. So I made a very hard decision. From this day onwards, I will recognize you as my daughter, Princess Anastasia's fiancée. May you and my daughter live a happy life together. Please, take good care of her, Lux. She means the world to me." Princess Anastasia blushed as she looked at the handsome half-elf, who stood rooted in the spot. To summarize the situation, it seemed like he was suddenly forced into a shotgun wedding without his consent. Lux didn't react and wondered if King Uther was speaking a foreign but similar-sounding language. "Your Majesty, thank you for the rewards that you bestowed upon me," Lux replied. "But there is no need for you to marry off your daughter to me. I already have 8 lovers, so I'm not sure if it's appropriate to force Princess Anastasia to marry me. I will just take the other rewards, and I thank you for your generosity." King Uther smiled. "Anastasia, you heard him. He already has 8 lovers. Do you still want to be with him?" "Of course I do," Princess Anastasia answered in a heartbeat. "Since he already has more than 5 lovers, adding one more won't make a difference." "You heard her, William." King Uther looked at the half-elf, who had a troubled expression on his face. "My daughter doesn't care even if you have 8 lovers. I also give you and her my blessing." Sir, my name isn't William," Lux replied. "You got the wrong person. I'm not the half-elf with 47 wives." "My bad," King Uther smiled. "My memory isn't that good." King Uther chuckled, which made Nevriel, who was standing beside him, smile. It was the middle-aged dwarf's idea to make Princess Anastasia marry Lux so that their kingdom would have a very strong person to protect it from any future threats. If it had been brought up in the past, King Uther would have definitely rejected this proposal without thinking. However, as a father, he already knew that his daughter really liked the half-elf ever since the latter had rescued her from the members of Twilight Reign. Also, he agreed with Nevriel. Lux was a very powerful individual. Although the kingdom of Guelevin was quite far from the center of Elysium, the guildmaster of the Adventurers Guild in Eronwen had heard of Lux's accomplishments against the Divine Army of Light. The palace was also in the capital city, Eronwen, so the guildmaster quickly related the information he got to the king. At first, King Uther and Nevriel didn't want to believe it. But, since they had known the guildmaster for a long time, they had no choice but to believe it. Also, Lux had 3 peak calamity-ranked monsters and 3 saints as his subordinates. And that wasn't all. The guildmaster of the Adventurers Guild had mentioned that Lux hadn't shown his full power when he fought against Twilight Reign. When he told them that the half-elf had command over hundreds of calamity-ranked monsters and had even made the Beast King his subordinate, King Uther's and Nevriel's eyes turned bloodshot. Knowing this, the 2 dwarves decided that no matter what happened, they needed to do their best to make Lux a part of the royal family. The only way to do that was through marriage. It just so happened that Princess Anastasia was already in love with Lux, so this was a perfect opportunity to tie the knot and make the half-elf his son-in-law. Princess Anastasia walked towards Lux and grabbed his hand. She then looked up at him with a sweet smile on her face, making the half-elf feel his heart waver slightly. However, since he already had many lovers, he decided to be firm and politely reject her advances. But before he could say these words of rejection towards the princess, Anastasia spoke before he did. "Sir Lux, where do you want to have our honeymoon?" Princess Anastasia asked. "There is a wonderful city that is surrounded by waterfalls and lakes in our kingdom. I think that is a good place to spend some quality time together." Lux blinked once, then twice as he looked at the princess who was looking up at him. "What honeymoon?" Lux asked. "I'm sorry, princess, but it will be best for you to find another person to marry. You deserve someone better than me." "But there is no one better than you, Sir Lux," Princess Anastasia replied. "I'm sure there are." Lux lightly patted Anastasia's head. "The world is a big place. You will eventually find someone who will love you with all of his heart, and you will love him as well with all of your heart." Princess Anastasia then firmly shook her head. "Perhaps a day ago that is still possible. But now, it's impossible, Sir Lux." "Impossible?" Lux arched an eyebrow. "How?" Princess Anastasia smiled before looking in the direction of Nevriel. The middle-aged dwarf nodded and walked toward the half-elf holding a scroll in his hand. Lux looked at the familiar-looking scroll, and a bad feeling arose in his heart. "Here you go, Lux," Nevriel said as he handed the scroll to the half-elf. "Welcome to the family." The red-headed teenager looked at the middle-aged dwarf weirdly before opening the scroll that was given to him, which was tied by a golden string and sealed with the mark of the king of the kingdom of Guelevin. Lux's body stiffened the moment his gaze landed on the contents of the scroll. The big bold words that said, "Certificate of Marriage," made his heart shudder as he read the rest that was written in the scroll. "This is to certify that I, Lux von Kaiser, and Anastasia von Guelevin, by virtue of this license, required by law and the Temple of the Gods, are united in the holy bonds of matrimony." His gaze then landed on the names of the witnesses who had signed the marriage certificate without his approval. Witnesses: Diego Mysteries, Taoist Golden Sin, Elian, R0 Ket, Jackanifer Gordon, The One Who Seek, Red Ghost, Firefly, Jesse_Boyer, Prince of Vernad, Evil Moo, Harsh_Sing 2745, Charred Wolf, Pista Stellero, Joe Nicole, Ethereal_Sass, Tayhawks, Lalzi, Jack_Baron, Robert Mias Melodus, Shadowed King, Poliar Nithar, Cameron Nithal, Malachi Wolf, Thurinder Stevenson, Celestial Faith, Rambo 1994, Benjamin_Green, Darkblade 875, Tumchanty 1120, Pfmello, Joe Jamble, Generated 05, Drockers 41, Zion_Hostin, Mystic Matt, Lord Darthcrow 13, Niminem, Monster Girl Harem King, Joth Death. Just who the fuck are these people? Lux scratched his head as he looked at the names who served as the witnesses of the marriage contract. "I don't even know them." A/N. To those who want their names added to the names of witnesses, post a comment in the comment section. But that was the least of his worries. The king had also signed the marriage certificate, and at the very bottom of it was Princess Anastasia's thumbprint. Right beside it was Lux's own thumbprint, making the half-elf understand just what the adorable princess had done earlier. Seeing his dumbfounded expression, Nevriel handed another scroll to Lux, which made the corner of his lips twitch after reading its contents. This time, it was a marriage contract, which included the prenuptial and postnuptial agreement between him and Princess Anastasia. When Lux saw the names of the two witnesses that were listed on the marriage contract, he almost ripped it apart. Witnesses: Ariel, Maquilxakitl, Max for short. At the very bottom of the contract, his and Princess Anastasia's thumbprints could be seen. The half-elf didn't know if he should laugh or cry after understanding everything that happened. He then looked at the princess, who was no longer smiling back at him. This time, The adorable dwarf was looking at him with a solemn expression on her face. "Sir Lux, know that I am serious about this," Princess Anastasia said. "I really want to be your fiancé. Although what I did earlier is unacceptable, know that this was just my desperate attempt to be with you. If you really feel that I have no place in your heart, then just tell me. I will burn these scrolls, and both of us can pretend that none of this happened." Anastasia's voice almost broke apart when she said the last words of her sentence. Still, she stood firm and looked at the half-elf with an affectionate gaze. Lux could see that the corners of her eyes were moist, as if she was holding back her tears. He also saw her hands resting over her skirt trembling, making the half-elf sigh in his heart. Earlier, he was truly on the verge of rejecting her proposal, but seeing how determined Princess Anastasia was, he felt himself hesitating. "Let me ask my fiancés about it," Lux said. "I would also like to show them these certificates if you don't mind." Princess Anastasia nodded before lowering her head. She was really doing her best to hold back the tears in her eyes, making King Uther, Nevriel, and Millie want to give her a hug. But Lux was a step faster than them and pulled Princess Anastasia close to him. "It's fine. Everyone in this room will momentarily become blind," Lux said softly. "None of them will see anything for the next few minutes. So you are free to do whatever you want in that time." King Uther, Nevriel, and Millie smiled at each other. Although they wanted to stay inside the room, they all decided to leave, so that Princess Anastasia wouldn't feel too conscious of their presence. The moment the three people left the throne room, the adorable princess tears finally fell. She wrapped her arms around Lux's waist and cried. When her father had asked her 2 days ago whether she wanted to get married to Lux, she readily said yes. She had been dreaming about this for a long time, and her father bringing up the topic made her very excited. It was simply a dream come true. Because of this, she asked Millie to go to the Temple of the Gods with her and asked the High Priestess to give her a marriage certificate. After that, he asked Nevriel for help in drafting a marriage contract. When everything was ready, she told Millie about the strategy they would use once Lux arrived. She had even practiced her jump and asked her brother, Robin, for help. Of course, Robin wanted his sister's happiness, so he allowed himself to be used as target practice until his fingers were all covered in ink. Countless scrolls were wasted as Princess Anastasia practiced to perfect her strategy. Of course, she knew that what she was doing would be for naught if Lux really strongly opposed marrying her. His rejection made her feel anxious, but after what happened in Wolf Pine Barony, she decided that she would live her life to the fullest. She didn't want to regret the decisions she didn't make. Even if Lux were to really reject her, at least she could tell herself with confidence that she had done her best. She went above and beyond her means to gain his approval. So, regardless of the outcome, she would stand by her choice and accept it, even if it meant breaking her heart. A few minutes passed in silence as Princess Anastasia cried silently while holding on to Lux. The half-elf was quite surprised with the strength of her hold on him. He had a feeling that even if he tried his best to pry her from his body, she would continue to hug him as if her life depended on it. Half an hour later, Princess Anastasia finally let go of him and took a step back. She then made a curtsy towards Lux before turning around. The princess of the kingdom then walked toward the gate of the throne room with steady steps. However, before she left, she said something that made Lux look at the wrist. "I am glad that you're still using the gift that I gave you," Princess Anastasia said without looking back. "Thank you, Sir Lux, for everything." After saying those words, the princess opened the gate and closed it behind her, leaving Lux all alone inside the throne room. A sigh escaped his lips as he looked at the mithril bracelet on his wrist. This was a gift that Princess Anastasia had given him long ago, telling him that it was a good luck charm. The bracelet could block one attack of a low ranker every 10 minutes, and it was considered one of the treasures of the kingdom. Princess Anastasia had given this to Lux because she was worried that the half-elf would get hurt if a ranker ever fought against him. Back then, Lux was just an initiate, and now, he had long outranked the capabilities of the bracelet. Even so, he still wore it because it was a gift given to him by the princess, whom he had saved in the past. Although it had several cracks in its surface, this precious gift had accompanied Lux on his journey, bearing witness to the hardships that he had experienced in life. He then looked at the marriage contract and the marriage certificate in his hands before turning into particles of light. Just as he mentioned, he needed to talk with Iris and Kai first. Depending on their decision, he would return to the kingdom of Guelevin to give the princess a proper answer to her feelings. Upon Lux's return to his guild headquarters, he immediately informed Iris and Kai about what happened in the kingdom of Guelevin. His two fiancés patiently listened to him until he finished explaining everything. A few minutes later, Iris arrived at Lux's guild headquarters so that they could talk about it more in detail. Since Kai was in the floating island right from the very beginning, she simply waited for Iris to come inside Lux's room. After making sure that Lux didn't leave out any details about what had happened in the throne room, his two fiancés talked to each other in private. However, they made sure to get the marriage certificate and the marriage contract from the half-elf. Of course, Lux didn't resist and handed it to them and watched the two ladies whom he loved very much leave the room so that they could discuss their verdict on Princess Anastasia's gutsy move. Kai had been part of the princess kidnapping incident and had even been kidnapped herself in the process. Even so, her understanding of the girl wasn't that much. Back then, she was yet to be Lux's fiancée, and her experiences in the kingdom of Guelevin were both exciting and frightening at the same time. Because of this, she had no time to get to know the kidnapped princess and, at most, Kai could only treat her as an acquaintance. Iris, who was perplexed and amused by the princess move, could tell that Anastasia was serious. At least, she was serious in her pursuit of Lux. Someone who only had shallow feelings wouldn't go as far as she did, sealing the deal by securing a marriage certificate and a marriage contract. Because of this, Iris and Kai decided to talk to Aina using the guild chat function. The princess of the Xeno Kingdom was still managing her guild as its guildmaster while staying in Lux's guild as a member. Aina's reasoning for joining Heaven's Gate was really simple. The first was that she could communicate with Lux anytime and anywhere. The second was that it allowed her to visit Lux's guild headquarters to meet up with him. The third was that if ever she wanted to meet the half-elf while the latter was traveling, she could ask Lux to summon her to his side, allowing the two of them to spend some quality time with each other. Also, the passive guild buffs that she received from Heaven's Gate weren't something to sneeze at. In fact, she was tempted to migrate her entire guild into Heaven's Gate, allowing her guild members to benefit from being able to join the one and only mythical guild in the world of Solais and Elysium. Lux told her that he didn't mind if Aina pushed through with this decision. In the end, he would simply let Aina retain control of her guild members and let them operate like before. Since Aina was his fiancée, it really didn't matter if he took command of the guild members of Eternal or not. Aina could simply command them as one of Lux's commanders, and everyone would fall in line without a problem. In fact, Aina was just about to propose to her guild members to migrate to Heaven's Gate when she received Iris' message, informing her of what had happened in the kingdom of Guelevin. She did what? Aina asked in the same monotonous voice that she always used when talking to someone. She was still finding it hard to change her facial expressions, but her emotions could now be seen in her eyes, although they would only manifest themselves whenever she was with Lux. She used Lux's thumbprints to legalize her marriage certificate and marriage contract, Iris answered. I just want to ask you what you know about the princess of the kingdom of Guelevin. Aina was quite surprised that the princess, whom she got along with, would resort to such tactics to make herself one of Lux's fiancés. But, after thinking about it, she thought that it was just a natural thing. In her eyes, Lux was a very handsome and charismatic person. It was very normal for ladies to fall for him after interacting with him for a time. Of course, she wouldn't deny that she was truly in love with Lux, so her feelings were a bit biased. Princess Anastasia is someone who genuinely cares for the kingdom of Guelevin, Aina stated. Although she has been spoiled by her father, she didn't become arrogant because of it and even does her best to help as many people as possible. She had also joined the competition to become the next ruler of the kingdom, which surprised her family. Even so, they all accepted that she had as much right as her brothers to become the next ruler of the kingdom of Guelevin. To be honest, I'm not fond of sharing Lux with more women, but if it's her, I don't mind making her one of my sisters. However, the marriage certificate and the marriage contract would have to go. I'm not allowing her to get ahead of me in marrying Lux. I already feel sad since both of you became Lux's fiancé before me. I should have been his first, considering our past relationship with each other. Although Aina was using the same monotonous voice as before, Iris still detected the hint of disappointment in them. Of course, she was not aware of Lux's and Aina's relationship in their past lives since neither would elaborate to her. Ariel and Max had stepped in and made their opinions known about sharing information about the cycle of reincarnation. Iris found Aina's complaint quite amusing, especially the part when the dwarf said that she should have been Lux's first fiancé. She had grown up with Lux since they were children, so it was impossible for Aina to get ahead of her when it came to the half-elf's love and attention. At least, that was what she thought in her heart. I see. Thank you for the information, Iris said. How do you plan to handle this incident? Aina inquired. She was quite curious about how Iris and Kai would handle this matter, and, frankly, she wanted to witness how things would unfold. I'll message you again after I talk to the others, Iris replied. Don't worry. I'll make sure that you'll be there when we give our verdict. After assuring Aina that she wouldn't be left out of the proceedings, Iris messaged Valerie, Aurelia, Aurora, Ollie, and Ari about the incident as well. That girl made a very ballsy move, Ari commented. She got balls. I'll give her that. She doesn't have balls, Ari, Ollie corrected her sister. She's a girl, not a boy. Sister, it's just a figure of speech. I know. I'm just teasing you. You. Valerie and Aurelia also found Princess Anastasia's move quite bold. After putting themselves in the dwarven princess shoes, they realized that they wouldn't be able to do what she did. As fellow members of the royal family, the two dragon princesses couldn't help but be impressed and frustrated at the same time with what Princess Anastasia had done. They loved Lux, but they also knew that they couldn't do anything remotely similar to what the dwarven princess dared to do. The more they thought about it, the more they felt that Anastasia was both scary and impressive at the same time. But, just like Aina, they didn't want the dwarf princess to disrupt the pecking order. Even if she wanted to become Lux's fiancée, she should fall in line like the rest of them and not jump ahead in line to seal the deal with a marriage certificate and a marriage contract. Aurora, on the other hand, was just as impressed by the others. In fact, she was looking forward to personally meeting Princess Anastasia and getting to know her better. Among Lux's lovers, Aurora knew more about desperation and loneliness than all of her sisters combined. She knew how much courage it took to take that one step to grab hold of what she truly wanted in life. The Misfortunes' beloved believed that Princess Anastasia felt the same, especially since she truly wanted to be with Lux. Although it might have started as puppy love, that feeling must have only grown stronger the more time they were apart. Usually, puppy love disappeared after some time, but Princess Anastasia's feelings were different. Lux very rarely came to see her in the Dwarven Kingdom because he was pretending to be dead so that Twilight Rain wouldn't look for him. He was also busy traveling all over Elysium and dealing with the Divine Army, who was always on his heels. After talking to Lux's lovers, Iris and Kai talked a bit more and came to an agreement. They then told the half-elf their decision. He didn't say anything and simply nodded his head before going back to the kingdom of Guelevin to talk to Princess Anastasia, King Uther, as well as Nevriel. Princess Anastasia's and Nevriel's eyes went as wide as saucers when Lux had invited both of them to join his guild. Their reaction made the half-elf chuckle internally, since he had expected this kind of reaction from them. Nevriel didn't know if he wanted to laugh or cry when he saw the name Heaven's Gate shining in front of his eyes. He was the one who gave Lux the funds to build his guild headquarters. Now he wondered if what he had given the half-elf was enough to build a place that was worthy of the one and only mythical guild in the world. If Nevriel only knew that he would have the honor of being the sponsor who would play a crucial role in building the guild headquarters of Heaven's Gate, he would have given Lux all of his money in order to construct the best guild headquarters that wouldn't put his name to shame. What kind of honor was this? It was the greatest honor of a lifetime. Nevriel had been pestering the half-elf to let him see the guild headquarters, but now he was having cold feet. How could he not be? If Lux's guild headquarters looked subpar, then he would take this shame to the grave with him. Princess Anastasia, on the other hand, wasn't feeling cold feet, but that didn't change the fact that she was feeling very anxious. Lux only told her that Iris and Kai wanted to meet her. He didn't say anything else. The princess knew that Judgment Day had come, and she was feeling extremely nervous about how things would unfold. "Let's go," Lux said with a smile. "Since you are now members of my guild, you can instantly teleport to it just by consciously thinking that you want to visit the guild headquarters." Princess Anastasia and Nevriel nodded their heads and did what he asked them to. A moment later, the two turned into beams of light, which proved that they had successfully teleported to his guild headquarters. When the princess and the middle-aged dwarf regained their vision, they found themselves staring at a marble castle in the distance. The structure stood tall and proud, making Nevriel breathe a sigh of relief in his heart. Although it wasn't something that could be called mind-blowing, it was still a good piece of architecture that he could be proud of. It was worth it. Nevriel almost became teary-eyed after seeing the guild headquarters of Heaven's Gate. He was quite upset in the past when Lux had scammed his hard-earned money out of him, but after seeing that it was used well, all those heartaches disappeared like the fleeting clouds in the sky. "Welcome to Heaven's Gate," Lux said with a smile as he gave the two dwarfs a light bow. "Please, follow me." Princess Anastasia and Nevriel glanced at each other before nodding their heads at the same time. The two followed behind Lux as he walked towards the gates of the marble castle where Emma and Garrett were waiting for their arrival. "These two are the caretakers of my guild, Emma and Garrett." Lux introduced his subordinates to his guests. "Emma is the guild's secretary, and Garrett is the vice-guild master, taking over my responsibilities whenever I am away. In short, they are the ones overseeing the operations of my guild." "The name is Emma. It is a pleasure to meet you, Princess Anastasia and Sir Nevriel," Emma said with a smile. She had traveled to many parts of the kingdom of Guelevin in the past as an adventurer before becoming Lux's secretary. Naturally, she knew who Princess Anastasia was and was quite happy to finally meet her in the flesh. "The name is Garrett." Garrett gave the two dwarves a brief nod of acknowledgement. "If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask." Lux had already told his two subordinates about the two guests that he would be bringing to the guild. They didn't know why the two had come to visit them, but since they were their guests who had been personally escorted by their guildmaster, they planned to give them the VIP treatment that they deserved. "Emma, please give Sir Nevriel a tour of the guild headquarters," Lux ordered. "He was the one who gave us the funds to build our castle. We owe our humble beginnings to him." Emma and Garrett looked at the middle-aged dwarf in surprise. Neither of them knew that Lux had scammed the poor guy and only thought that he was a very generous person for giving the half-elf the funds to build their guild headquarters. Their impressions of him were raised by a notch, and both decided to treat him as a true VIP guest from the bottom of their hearts. Nevriel, who felt flattered by Lux's introduction, couldn't help but smile. He secretly thanked the half-elf in his heart for boosting his image to his subordinates. "Please come with me, Sir Nevriel," Emma said in a respectful tone and even gave the middle-aged dwarf a light bow. "I will give you the full tour of our guild headquarters." "Thank you." Nevriel nodded and followed behind Emma. Garrett gave Lux a glance, and the half-elf nodded his head in understanding. The vice-guildmaster of Heaven's Gate then joined Emma and Nevriel on their tour. He could tell that the middle-aged dwarf was a military man, so he planned to talk about something that they had in common to get to know him better. Lux then glanced at Princess Anastasia and offered his hand. He could tell that she was feeling anxious, and she had every right to feel that way. The half-elf had been excluded from the decision-making process, so even he didn't know how things would turn out. However, that didn't mean that he didn't care for the princess, who, although she looked calm on the surface, was feeling nervous deep inside her heart. Princess Anastasia gladly accepted Lux's gesture and placed her hand over his. The two of them walked hand in hand toward the conference room of the guild where Iris and Kai were waiting for their arrival. When they arrived at their destination, Lux knocked on the door and announced their arrival. "Let her come in alone," Iris' voice was heard from the other side of the door. After hearing his fiancée's words, he glanced at the princess and saw her nod in acknowledgement. Lux then opened the door, allowing the young lady to enter on her own. The moment she walked inside the room, he closed it behind her. Truth be told, Princess Anastasia wasn't the only one who was feeling anxious. He was feeling anxious as well. Lux had already prepared himself for the worst-case scenario of escorting a broken-hearted Anastasia back to her kingdom. The half-elf looked at the closed door in front of him before heaving a deep sigh. The only thing he could do right now was wait until their talks were over. Inside the conference room, Princess Anastasia found herself staring at 5 beautiful ladies, and they all made her feel intimidated. Valerie, Ali, and Ari weren't present because it was impossible at this time. The Dragon King refused to let the Dragon Princess leave Karshvar Draconis for a short period of time because of what was happening in the central regions of Elysium. Princess Anastasia looked at the women, whom she believed to be Lux's fiancés, with a calm expression on her face. But, deep inside, the pressure that these 5 people were giving her was making her heart shudder. Even so, as a princess of a kingdom, she knew that she should keep her composure at all times, especially when she was going to negotiate something. As she scanned the faces of the people inside the conference room, she recognized Aina, which surprised her very much. She's one of Sir Lux's fiancés? Princess Anastasia thought. To think that the expressionless guildmaster of Eternal, whom our kingdom had hailed as the warrior princess, would be one of his lovers. I didn't expect to see her here. Taking a deep breath, Princess Anastasia took a step forward and made a curtsy to introduce herself to the ladies who held a position in Lux's heart. My name is Anastasia von Guelevin. Princess Anastasia introduced herself humbly. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to meet all of you. Iris von Kaiser. Iris introduced herself as well. Caitlin von Kaiser, Kai said. Aina von Kaiser, Aina stated. Aurora von Kaiser. Aurora smiled. Aurelia didn't introduce herself right away. Instead, she took a deep breath before looking at Princess Anastasia with determined eyes. Aurelia von Kaiser, Aurelia declared. She had already made her intention of marrying Lux, known to her mother, and her Aunt Augustina. Although she would still retain her family name and identity as the Dragon Prince of the Crystal Palace, within this closed-off room, she made sure to declare that she was one of Lux's fiancés. Princess Anastasia nodded her head in acknowledgement before resting her hands over her skirt. Do you already know why we have called for you to come here today? Iris asked. Yes, Princess Anastasia replied. I came here to hear your answers. Iris smiled sweetly before taking the marriage certificate and the marriage contract from her storage ring. She held each of them in her hands. This is our answer, Kai stated before snapping her fingers. A moment later, the marriage certificate and the marriage contract burst into flames. Princess Anastasia looked at the 2 scrolls with dazed eyes and felt a stinging pain in her innocent heart, which was very close to breaking into pieces. Princess Anastasia dazedly looked at the burning scrolls until nothing but ashes remained. Deep in her heart, she already expected this to happen. And because she had somewhat prepared herself, it didn't take long for her to regain composure despite the pain that she was feeling inside her chest. Do you know why we burned these scrolls? Iris asked. I do, Princess Anastasia replied, but I still want to hear it from your lips. The corner of Iris' lips rose because she was quite impressed by the young lady's reply. She could see the hurt in Princess Anastasia's eyes and the subtle trembling of her hands. Even so, the princess of the dwarf kingdom held her ground, befitting someone of her standing. We cannot allow our beloved to suffer an injustice, Iris replied. Him being forced into a relationship is something that we will not allow, especially if it's a one-sided relationship. Of course, that is only one of the reasons, Aina commented in the same monotonous voice that she always used. Princess, you jumped a couple of steps ahead of us. We are only Lux's fiancés at the moment, and yet, you made him sign a marriage certificate. If we approved of that, wouldn't that make you his first wife? That's not possible because I will become his first wife. The doll-like beauty said these words in a firm and confident tone, making Iris shake her head helplessly. This wasn't the first time that Aina had challenged her position as Lux's first wife, so she was already used to it. I know that our beloved is quite charismatic and very handsome, Kai said with a smile. It is only normal for you to fall in love with him, especially after he rescued you from the kidnappers of Twilight Rain. But are you sure that this feeling you have for him isn't just admiration? It might only be respect and adoration instead of love. Princess Anastasia shook her head. Do not treat me like a child. While it is true that my feelings for Sir Lux started when he saved me from Twilight Rain, I knew for a fact that this wasn't mere respect and adoration. I am a princess of a kingdom, someone who is meant to be used as a political tool in order to strengthen our nation. However, I refuse to take that role. That's why I decided to join my brothers and compete for the position of crown princess. I am someone who wants to control my own fate. However, after meeting Sir Lux, I am confident that, if given the choice of spending my life with him and ruling the kingdom of Guelevin, I will choose to spend my life with him in a heartbeat. This is not a choice made from infatuation. This is a choice that I made for the sake of my future happiness. Iris nodded her head to acknowledge Princess Anastasia's statement. What you did was indeed very bold, Iris replied, but it isn't original. The blue-haired beauty then took out a scroll from her storage ring and threw it towards Princess Anastasia. The latter caught it and opened it to see what was written inside it. To her surprise, it was a marriage certificate and was dated 4 years ago. Similar to her marriage contract, Lux's thumbprint was also printed on the marriage certificate. This? Princess Anastasia looked at Iris in confusion. Why do you have this? Aren't you already engaged with Sir Lux? Iris nodded. Yes, but, in the past, my father was against it. Because of this, I decided to make a backup plan with the help of my grandmother. She made Lux put his thumbprint on this marriage certificate while he was sleeping. Iris said it proudly, making the ladies inside the conference room look at her weirdly. Even Aina, who usually had an expressionless face, couldn't stop the corner of her lips from twitching. That's not something you should be proud of, Aina stated. Iris shrugged. I know. Fortunately, I didn't have to use it since Lux and I are now engaged with each other. With a wave of her hand, the marriage certificate flew back to her hand. Iris then carefully stored it inside her storage ring with a smile on her face. You're worse than me, Princess Anastasia said. At least, when I took Sir Lux's thumbprint, he was conscious. You took it when he was sleeping. Right. Iris nodded. And because of this, I understand why you did what you did. But that doesn't make it right. What I did was wrong since this marriage certificate in my hand was taken when Lux was unaware of it. But in the end, this scroll doesn't have any binding power in it. So I just keep it as a memento. What Iris didn't know was that after seeing her marriage certificate, the rest of her sisters were very tempted to also get their own marriage certificates as a memento. However, they held back these thoughts for now since they still had to address their verdict to Princess Anastasia. As Lux's first fiancée, I recognize your will to become his lover, Iris stated. But cutting in line is no good. Even so, we decided to give you a chance. Kai nodded. This time, pursue Lux properly. He already knows your feelings for him, so you don't have to beat around the bush. Take your time and talk to him and start as friends. Aurora, who was quietly listening from the side, walked towards Princess Anastasia and gave her a hug. Do your best, Princess, Aurora said softly as she patted the young lady's head. I look forward to becoming your sister. Perhaps, feeling touched by Aurora's genuine words, the emotions that Princess Anastasia had been holding back finally gave way. She hugged Aurora back and buried her head on her chest. She then wept tears of sadness and relief, knowing that she still had a chance of pursuing her happiness. The half-succubus kept on patting the princess' head until her tears stopped falling. When Princess Anastasia was done crying, Aurora crouched down and wiped the tears from her face with a handkerchief. Although the tear stains were now gone, the redness around the young lady's eyes was still there. Since the pink-haired beauty was a kind and caring person, she whispered something in Princess Anastasia's ear, which made the younger girl momentarily forget losing control over her emotions earlier. Listen closely, Anastasia, Aurora whispered. If all of your approaches toward Lux fail, know that he is very weak against thighs. If you use this to your advantage, you can definitely make him fall for you. Princess Anastasia's face became beet red after hearing Aurora's words. She didn't know if the pink-haired beauty was just teasing her to relieve the tension in her heart or not. I'm serious, you know? Aurora smiled. If you don't know how it's done, I will help you. We will pin Lux down together, okay? Iris, Kai, Aina, and Aurelia couldn't help but shake their heads helplessly because one of their sisters was revealing Lux's weakness to someone who had just tried to force their fiancé to sign a marriage certificate. Knowing how cunning the dwarf princess was, she would definitely use everything to her advantage to seal the deal with Lux. Fortunately, Princess Anastasia didn't know that Aurora was telling the truth. Half an hour later, the door of the conference room opened, and Princess Anastasia came out alone. The half-elf looked at her and noticed that her eyes were red and sighed in his heart. Did they reject her? Lux thought. Although the princess tried hard not to show it, he could tell that she was feeling somewhat sad. But before Lux could even say anything to comfort her, Princess Anastasia smiled at him and spoke first. "Sir Lux, please take me back to my kingdom," Princess Anastasia said. "Lightsfell, okay," Lux replied. The princess then took the initiative to take Lux's hand, which surprised him. Even so, he didn't make any move to pry her hand away and held her hand firmly. He then guided her toward the teleportation gate, instantly teleporting them to the private teleportation gate of the royal family of the Kingdom of Guelevin. Anastasia didn't say anything until they reached the hallway leading to the throne room. "This far is already good, Sir Lux," Princess Anastasia said before reluctantly pulling her hand back. "Thank you for everything." The princess then curtsied to the half-elf before looking straight into his eyes. "Are you not going to ask what happened inside the conference room?" Princess Anastasia asked. "Do you want to tell me?" Lux asked. Princess Anastasia thought before shaking her head. "No. But know this, Sir Lux." The young lady walked forward to give the half-elf a hug. "I'm not going to give up," Princess Anastasia said. "So prepare yourself to fall in love with me, okay? This time, I will do it properly. No more tricks." At first, Lux didn't know how to react to Princess Anastasia's confession. But a few seconds later, he crouched down and looked her in the eye. "Did they tell you my weakness?" Lux asked. Princess Anastasia blinked innocently. "What weakness? Do you have a weakness, Sir Lux?" Lux smiled before lightly patting the princess' head. "I'll be going now, princess," Lux said as he bowed lightly. "Do you wish to remain in my guild?" "I do," Princess Anastasia replied in a heartbeat. "Please let me remain in your guild." "Understood." Lux nodded. "Please call me if something is troubling you or the kingdom. I will do my best to help." "Thank you, Sir Lux," Princess Anastasia said before gesturing to Lux like she wanted to whisper something in his ears. The half-elf then crouched once again in order to listen to what she was going to tell her. A moment later, he felt something soft press against his cheek, which lingered for at least 3 seconds. Before he could even do anything, Princess Anastasia was already running away, leaving behind a mischievous laughter in her wake. Lux knew that the princess was only hiding her feelings behind her happy facade. Even so, he also felt her resolve. "Take care, Anastasia," Lux said softly before turning around. "I'll see you soon." The half-elf then turned into particles of light. Now that his business in the Kingdom of Guelevin was resolved, he once again returned to his guild headquarters to handle some of the important matters that he had left behind. What he wasn't aware of was that the moment he returned, he would find his other lovers asking for his thumbprint on their own marriage certificates, making the half-elf scratch his head helplessly. Meanwhile, above the capital city of the Ashenheart family in the Ford Federation, "I'll sing you a song. It's the song of the sea," Eiko sang as her body swayed from side to side. "I'll sing you a song if you sing it with me," Fei Fei also sang, imitating Eiko's body movement. Countless skeleton swashbucklers played their instruments as their two mistresses happily sang on the commanding platform of the battleship Poseidon. But their merry atmosphere completely contrasted the one-sided battle that was taking place below them. The pirates, who had decided to become part of Eiko's Boom Boom pirate crew, were launching a major offensive against the 3 great families of the Ford Federation. They had just subjugated the Dreadheart family, and they were now heading toward the capital city of the Ashenheart family in order to vent out their frustrations for the countless years of suffering that they had to endure from these tyrants. The pirates of the 7 seas didn't become pirates because they wanted to. They became pirates because they were forced to. They were the people who wanted to put a stop to the tyranny of the 3 great families and their allies, the 10 prestigious families. After destroying the Grand Fleet of the Ford Federation, Aiko brought the battle to the land. Using the power of the Golden Anchor, all the pirate ships gained the power to fly in the sky. With this, they headed to the mainland and started to wreak havoc, destroying the strongholds of the families who wanted to control everything in the Seven Seas. "What do you want?" The Supreme that belonged to the Ashenheart family shouted to Avery, who was preventing him from reinforcing his men to defend their city. "Money? Influence? Power? I will give them all to you. Just stop this." The middle-aged man's eyes were bloodshot as he looked at the devastation happening all around him. He and his family had stood strong in the Ford Federation for hundreds of years, and no one had dared to attack them openly until today. Avery chuckled before shaking his head. "My mistress wants to take over the entire Ford Federation and put it under her control." "Ridiculous," the Supreme of the Ashenheart family replied. "Do you think the people will accept you if you do this? They'd rather serve us than be ruled over by pirates." Avery disappeared from where he stood and reappeared in front of the middle-aged man. He then gave the Supreme a slap, sending the other party flying toward the plaza of the city, destroying his own statue that was built hundreds of years ago. "Don't treat my mistress like an ordinary pirate," Avery said in a tone that was reeking with killing intent. "I'm sure that she will be a better ruler than the 3 great families and the 10 prestigious families combined." The middle-aged man glared at the ancient skeleton king in anger, but he didn't make any reply. He was waiting for something to happen to turn this entire situation around. At that moment, he heard something inside his head, which made him smile internally. "What took you so long?" the Supreme from the Ashenheart family asked. "Don't whine," an annoyed voice replied. "I'm already here. What kind of help do you want?" The Supreme of the Ashenheart family then told his ally his plan, and the latter agreed to it. The saints of the 10 prestigious families had arrived to reinforce his family and started dealing with the pirates, who had the upper hand earlier. While this was happening, the Supreme of the Shadowheart family landed on the deck of Aiko's flagship, Poseidon. "So, you are that pirate princess who has been causing trouble over our territory, huh?" A skinny old man looked at Aiko, who was singing happily earlier but was now looking back at him in annoyance. The pirate swashbucklers immediately surrounded the intruder, protecting their mistress from any harm. "Bunch of small fries, be gone!" the Supreme of the Shadowheart family shouted, and the bodies of all the skeleton swashbucklers shattered into pieces, leaving only the 2 slimes behind. "Now, it's your turn," the Supreme of the Shadowheart family said. "To think that a lowly slime would cause this much trouble for our families. Such a disgrace." Fei Fei hid behind Aiko because the Supreme made her afraid. Aiko, on the other hand, simply glared at the approaching old man, making the latter chuckle. "Well, since these people are obeying your orders, I just need to capture you," the Supreme said. "That demigod down there also listens to your orders. Maybe keeping you as a pet is also a good idea." But the moment the old man was only a few meters away from Aiko, the deck that the old man was standing on suddenly split apart. Losing his footing, the Supreme fell to the 2nd level of the ship. The deck then returned to normal, and all the skeleton swashbucklers revived as if nothing had happened. They then resumed playing their instruments and encouraged the 2 baby slimes to continue singing. While this was happening, the Supreme of the Shadowheart family found himself in what seemed to be a graveyard. Of course, he remembered everything that happened earlier, so he flew upwards with the intention of breaking through the floor above his head. However, it didn't take long for him to realize that no matter how high he flew, he never seemed to be able to reach the supposed ceiling that was covered in bones. "Futile." A voice that was filled with disdain echoed inside the domain, making the Supreme shudder. "The moment you step on my body is the moment your fate is sealed. This will become your grave." As if proving that point, a giant golden skeleton that was 30 meters tall appeared inside the domain. It held 2 golden swords, one in each hand, and looked at the Supreme from the Shadowheart family in contempt. Knowing that saying anything would not make any difference, the skinny old man roared as he charged toward the giant golden skeleton with the intention of fighting it to the death. Unfortunately, he wasn't even given that opportunity. With a single flick of the golden skeleton's sword, the supreme of the Shadowheart family lost both of his arms in an instant. A second flick and his legs disappeared, making the supreme fall towards the graveyard. The last thing that the old man saw was a black coffin and a beautiful spectral lady who was holding a sword in her hand. He wasn't even given the chance to say his last words before the beautiful woman pierced his heart with her sword. Blackfire patiently waited until the Supreme was nearly dead before swallowing him whole. Of course, it picked up the sliced-off arms and legs that were lying on the ground and devoured them as well. A few minutes later, the Supreme of the Ashenheart family also fell and became Blackfire's latest victim. After that, all the saints from the 10 prestigious families suffered the same fate. Before the day was over, Eiko had completely subjugated all the major forces that stood in her way. The flag of the Boom Boom pirate crew fluttered over all the cities of the Ford Federation, making it known that everyone was now under Eiko's rule. Although it would take a while for reality to sink in and make everyone understand that the rule of the 3 great families and the 10 prestigious families had been severed, it would eventually come to pass. News of this incident spread to every corner of the 7 seas, informing the other seafaring nations that there was a new faction that had risen out of nowhere. These nations, who shared the seas with the Ford Federation, immediately called for a conference. They needed to discuss how they were going to deal with their new neighbor, whose fluttering flags made them feel as if they were facing an unbeatable behemoth and whose danger seemed to be hiding behind the sweet smile of a baby slime. 5 days had passed since Princess Anastasia and Nevriel had visited the guild headquarters of Heaven's Gate. Since then, the dwarf princess would often use the guild chat function to chat with Lux whenever she was free. For her, this was the perfect opportunity to get closer to Lux and talk to him anytime. Since the half-elf couldn't always visit the kingdom of Guelevin to see her, she decided to take the initiative to strengthen their bonds and get to know him better. Their talks would last a few minutes at most, but these few minutes were very precious to the dwarf princess. Simply hearing the half-elf's voice and talking to him about trivial things, like what he had eaten, what he was doing, and the weather, was enough to make her happy. Lux also enjoyed these short conversations with Princess Anastasia and would ask her a few questions in return. Of course, the other ladies heard about this, so they also started to use the guild chat function to its fullest. Valerie, Aurelia, Ali, Ari, and Aurora would often talk to Lux in private. Sometimes, the half-elf would even talk to multiple girls at once. In fact, they had even created their own chat rooms for this very purpose. Valerie, Aurelia, Aurora, Ali, and Ari would often talk to Lux in the chat room that they named Lux's favorite harem members, which almost made him choke when he was invited to join it. Of course, the one who came up with this idea was the mischievous handmaiden, Ari. Lightnovel, however, since it had a nice ring to it, Valerie, Aurelia, Aurora, and Ali reluctantly accepted it. All of them wanted to know more about him, and he also wanted to know more about them as well. In the past 5 days, Lux discovered many things about his lovers that made him fall in love with them all over again. He especially loved Ari's stories about Valerie and Ali, which made the 2 girls team up against the mischievous handmaiden, preventing her from telling Lux about their most embarrassing moments. Aurelia was also very happy to know more about her dragon sisters and Aurora, who loved the same man that she chose as her significant other. The more he talked to his lovers, the closer he became to them. Even Aurora, who didn't have any good memories while she was imprisoned in the inner sanctum, gradually opened up and shared her memories of her sister and her mother. Lux still hadn't told Aurora that Queen Bianca was now inside Blackfire, under recovery. Her soul was getting stronger with each passing day thanks to the core of the crystal dragon that Blackfire was using to nourish her soul. Once her soul fully recovered, Lux planned to look for the perfect vessel that could be used to help his mother-in-law reform her body. Lux knew that he only had a slim chance of finding a fallen seraphim or any other higher existences that could potentially be used to revive Queen, but Lux wasn't giving up hope. He wanted Aurora's mother to have a strong body that would allow her to return to the world of the living and hold her beloved daughters once again. For now, he planned to keep it a secret and give the pink-haired beauty the best gift that he could give her in this lifetime. As his lovers continued their talks with him, they finally broached the subject about his family. Of course, he mentioned that he was adopted by his grandmother, Vera, and became Iris' stepbrother after he was registered as Alexander's son. Valerie innocently asked Lux about his mother, purely wanting to know what she was like. The dragon princess really loved her mother and would often confide in her the things that she could never tell her father. Of course, Valerie had withheld the information about Lux becoming her lover because Ollie and Ari cautioned her that this wasn't the right time to reveal this information to her parents. Lux, who was asked this question, pondered for a bit. His mother from his past life often called him a mistake and someone that shouldn't have been born. Of course, the half-elf couldn't possibly share this with his innocent lover, who might feel sad after knowing the truth. Then, Lux remembered about the mother of the body that he had possessed when he arrived in the world of Solais. He remembered how the young elf cried as she lovingly held the basket containing her dead baby. She even gave him a name, even though he was already dead. Lux. The name meant light. Perhaps, the elf wanted her son to become the light of her life, so she gave him this name. My mother and I were separated at birth, Lux answered Valerie's question. Due to circumstances, she was forced to part with me. However, I am certain that she loves me very much. Oh, no, Valerie is crying, Ari stated. It seems that she feels sad that you were separated from your mother. Lux, I hope that you reunite with your mother, Valerie said after she regained her composure. I'm sure that she always thinks of you. Lux replied. I hope for that as well. The half-elf sighed in his heart as he remembered that scene that happened 18 years ago. Truth be told, the day he turned 18 was in the midst of his chain conquest of the territories that had allied themselves with the divine army of light. He had completely forgotten about it back then, and if not for Iris urging that they celebrate it even though it was late, Lux might have simply ignored it completely. Yes. Lux was now 18 years old and had already surpassed the ranks of his peers who had started earlier than him in going to the world of Elysium. In the span of 2 years, Lux had experienced many things in the world of Elysium. He had met many important people who taught him many valuable lessons in life. He also met his lovers, who made him feel like the happiest and luckiest man in the world. He had met his master, Gaap, who had become one of his role models in life. He laughed. He cried. He felt anger. He felt despair. But, more than anything, he felt loved. Loved by his lovers, family, friends, and acquaintances who had become part of his life. After his talk with his lovers ended, Lux visited his master's grave and talked to him about the things that he had experienced since he had last visited him. Although he knew that his master's soul had already ceased to exist, he still felt like sharing his experience with one of the people who had treated him like family was something that he needed to do. By doing this, he was also able to release the pin-up emotion in his heart as he confided his feelings to his master, who would usually listen to his woes with a knowing smile on his face. Although his master wouldn't bat an eye at performing a one-sided genocide, he was actually very warm to the people he cared about. The best and most beautiful things in this world cannot be seen or even be heard, but must be felt with the heart. To give life a meaning, one must have a purpose larger than self. I think that is what everyone should strive for in life, pursuing happiness even though it is fleeting like the clouds in the sky. Lux felt teary-eyed as he looked at his master's tomb. He dearly missed his master, and one of the greatest regrets in his life was to not see the halfling hold his children after they were born. Gaap might have tried to hide it, but he actually loved the idea of being part of a family. He had lost everything when he was still young, and if not for Hirswith, he might have died alongside his family. I'll see you again soon, master, Lux said as he lightly patted the gravestone. There is someone I want to meet right now. After saying those words, Lux transformed into particles of light and returned to Solais. Although he didn't need to do this, he wanted to give closure to the feelings that had been weighing down his heart ever since he was given a second chance at life. It has been a while since we had breakfast like this, right, Lux? Vera said as she looked at her grandson, who was eating the simple breakfast that she had prepared for him. Indeed, Grandma, Lux replied. We should do this more often. It's you who's always busy. Many things happened as of late. Vera only smiled. Iris had told her everything that Lux had experienced in Elysium over the past few months. She felt heartbroken that her grandson had to suffer seeing his master die. He even had to fight against the divine army a second time in order to save Aina. Lux never asked for her help despite knowing that he only needed to say a word for her to come to his side and assist him, regardless of who he was fighting against. "You should eat a lot as well, Aurora," Vera said as she looked at the pink-haired beauty sitting beside her grandson. "Become healthy and give birth to healthy children. I want to hug my great-grandkids as soon as possible." Aurora blushed after hearing Vera's words. Even so, she nodded her head with a smile because she wanted this to happen as well. She found out that Lux had returned to Solais half an hour ago when she decided to talk to Lux in private. The half-elf said that he was planning to go somewhere in Solais, and Aurora mentioned in passing that she would love to accompany him wherever he was planning to go. Perhaps feeling that Aurora wanted to spend some time with him, he asked her if she truly wanted to come with him. After the young lady said yes, Lux summoned her using Heaven's Call, making her appear beside him. Unlike the others who were born and raised in Elysium, Aurora could travel to Solais. This was why Lux could summon her anytime regardless of where he was in both worlds. When Vera asked her grandson if he was planning to visit Iris and Kai in Barbados Academy, the half-elf shook his head and informed her of the real reason he decided to return. "Do you want me to go with you?" Vera asked. "No, Grandma," Lux replied. "I'm still unsure about how to proceed, so it will be best if you don't come with me for now." Vera sighed in her heart, but she still nodded her head since she respected her grandson's opinion. "Understood," Vera said. "But if there is a chance, I would like to meet her too." Lux nodded. Right now, he couldn't make any promises, so he simply nodded his head in agreement. Truth be told, the half-elf didn't really know why he decided to do something that he never planned on doing in the past. Perhaps it was because of Valerie's innocent question that he decided to confront the things that he had set aside in the deepest part of his heart. "Grandma, can I borrow Sophie?" Lux inquired. He knew that his grandma loved to travel with the white hippo, even though she could easily cross great distances now that she was a saint. "Of course," Grandma Vera replied with a smile. "Sophie has missed you too, you know? I'm sure she'll be happy to spend some time with you." After eating breakfast, Lux and Aurora rode on the back of the white hippo and traveled upstream in the river. The young lady leaned her body against Lux's, enjoying this time that they were together. Lux, on the other hand, held her waist as he, too, enjoyed this intimate moment with her. Sophie swam at her own pace, and the two teenagers on her back were more than happy to leave everything to her. They simply enjoyed the scenery that they passed by and talked about random things, including the number of babies that they would have in the future. Unlike Lux's other lovers, Aurora was still a chaste maiden. Physically, at the least. What Lux didn't know was that, among his lovers, she was the most experienced of them all. The half-succubus was able to merge her consciousness with any of Lux's lovers, as long as they were within a 1,000-meter radius around her. Lights fell, but there was a catch. This was only possible if Lux was about to do something intimate with his lovers, allowing Aurora to feel the same emotions that they did. After experiencing what she did, Aurora was looking forward to the day when she and Lux would finally become one. She wanted their first moment to be just the two of them and away from her sisters who would often see him in private whenever he was inside his guild headquarters. Since Lux's guild headquarters was within the territory of the Crystal Palace, his most frequent visitor was Aurelia. The Dragon Princess would visit the half-elf every time she was done with her duties, and Lux was more than happy to help his lover relax by giving her a full body massage. Of course, whenever this happened, Aurora would also receive that full body massage, making the half-succubus lock herself up inside her room and prevent anyone from seeing her in that state. His second most frequent visitor was Aina. To this day, Aurora still couldn't believe that the doll-like beauty, who always wore an expressionless look on her face, was very aggressive in bed. Aurora secretly anticipated the moment when Aina's calm and cold appearance melted into that of a maiden and loved the moment she reached her climax. Deep inside, she secretly wondered if she would make the same expression after she made love to Lux for the first time. 3 days passed since Lux, Aurora, and Sophie had left Wildguard Stronghold. The half-elf had guided the white hippo on their journey, telling her which river path to choose whenever there were intersecting branches. Soon, they reached the place in Lux's memory. The place where a dead half-elf baby was sent to float down the river because he couldn't be buried in the lands of Ashantheus. A place where half-bloods, like him, were treated as rejects by the elves, who thought highly of their pure bloodline. Lux, where are we? Aurora asked as she looked at her surroundings. She could tell that people frequented this place since there was a path that led to the river. Lux didn't tell her where they were going, but she assumed that it must be an important place to the half-elf, since he was looking at his surroundings as if he was reminiscing about something. This is the land of Ashantheus, Lux replied. I have come here to look for someone. Who? Aurora asked. Someone very important, Lux answered. If not for her tragedy, I wouldn't be here today. Aurora glanced at the half-elf, who suddenly showed a sad expression on his face. She didn't know what kind of tragedy he was talking about, but for the time being, she decided to not ask any questions. Understood, Aurora said as she held Lux's hand. You can always tell me when you're ready, okay? Lux nodded. Thank you, Aurora. The half-elf held her hand firmly and gave it a light squeeze. This was his way of telling her that he was all right. He then took a deep breath before glancing towards the east. He could sense a strong congregation of life force in that direction, which is how he knew that there was a settlement not far from where they stood. Let's go this way, Lux said as he pointed towards the east. I believe that there is a village of elves nearby. I don't know how they will react to strangers, so make sure to stay on your guard. Aurora nodded seriously after hearing Lux's statement. She had already become a C-ranker. This meant that as long as she wouldn't be fighting against a high-ranker, she would be able to protect herself just fine. Lux held her hand and walked at a steady pace. It was neither fast nor slow. Clearly, he was not in a hurry to get to their destination and took time to enjoy the scenery as he took one step at a time. A few minutes later, they arrived at a tall wooden gate with intricate designs. The elves were known for their artistic side. Some of them dedicated their lives to their art, creating masterpieces that would often be sold in human domains and bought by wealthy nobles. Halt! A loud shout reached Lux's and Aurora's ears as several elves on top of the wooden walls aimed their bows and arrows in their direction. Who are you, and what are you doing in our lands? Lux scanned the faces of the elves and was pleasantly surprised when he noticed that all of them were D-rankers. The one who shouted was a B-ranker, which made him the strongest among the guards who were just a push away from releasing their arrows. My name is Lux von Kaiser, and this young lady beside me is my fiancée, Aurora von Kaiser, Lux replied. We are just adventurers who happen to travel to these parts. We have been traveling for days, and if possible, we wish to replenish our food supplies and take a rest inside your village to recover our strength. Lightsfell the guards glanced at each other, while their guard captain narrowed his eyes. He could tell that Lux was an A-ranker, while Aurora was a C-ranker. He was stronger than Aurora, but he was not a match against the red-headed half-elf, who made him feel disgusted. Half-elves are not allowed to enter our village, the guard captain replied in disdain. The mere fact that you have stepped inside our lands is already a crime in itself. However, since we are not fond of conflicts, we will allow you to leave with your lives intact. Leave Ashantheus, and don't step foot inside it again. The other elves also nodded their heads. No matter what happens, they will never allow a half-elf to enter their village. Lux frowned because if possible, he didn't want to start a conflict with the elves. However, since he had come to meet someone, he couldn't possibly return without meeting her. Are you sure that we really can't stay in your village? Lux tried to ask one more time. We just need 2 days to rest. I promise that we will leave in 2 days. Did you not hear me, half-elf? The guard captain whom Lux named Villager A inside his head shouted. You are not welcome here. Get lost before we lose our patience. Get out. Scram. Filthy half-blood. Aurora looked at Lux anxiously because she could tell that they really had no intention of letting him inside their village. If this were the same Lux from 3 months ago, then perhaps he might have left silently or looked for another method to enter peacefully. However, Lux was different now. If people didn't like him, then he didn't like them either. He had enough of being looked down upon and getting bullied by people. Since he couldn't settle things peacefully, then he would settle things a little less peacefully. Come, Avernus, Lux ordered. Help me convince these people to let me inside their village. Suddenly, a giant Dracolic appeared behind Lux, catching the elves by surprise. Avernus then roared fiercely, sending a shockwave that rippled across the lands of Ashantheas, alerting the powerhouses who were protecting its domain to his presence. The protectors of the elven village rushed towards the gate with the intention of protecting their domain. However, the moment their eyes landed on the giant Dracolic, whose presence exceeded that of a saint, all of them felt as if their legs had turned to jelly. Avernus smiled evilly as it unleashed its dragon fear, making the elves who had all gathered on top of the walls of the village fall down to their knees. At that moment, an old elf, whom Lux recognized, appeared on top of the walls and bowed his head respectfully towards Avernus. "Why, Your Excellency, I apologize if my people offended you," the village head, who went by the name Amar, said with reverence. "We are just simple villagers, living simple lives. I beg of you, please spare us." "Spare you?" Avernus snorted. "Did you know how your guards insulted my master when he tried to peacefully enter your village? Filthy, lowly, puny, ugly, despicable, snot-nosed elves. Are all of you courting death? Even if you sold every elf in this village, it is still nowhere enough to pay for a drop of my master's blood. Who gave all of you the balls to act cocky? Just where is that confidence of yours coming from?" Amar, who was facing Avernus' cold and merciless eyes, shuddered uncontrollably. He could tell that if he didn't choose his words carefully, he and his entire village would disappear from the face of the world in an instant. It is my fault that His Excellency's master has suffered," Amar stated. "I should have told the guards to be more lenient to visitors who are traveling within our lands. I promise that this incident will not happen again. So if you please." "Of course, this incident will not happen again," Avernus cut off Amar's reply. "Because after I'm done with you, this village will cease to exist." The guards and their captain, who heard this, cried out in alarm. All of them began to beg for forgiveness. If they only knew that the half-elf could summon a calamity-ranked monster, they wouldn't dare to offend him the way they did earlier. Offending someone with a calamity-ranked monster when the strongest beings in the Six Kingdoms were only saints? Simply courting death.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.